Imagine with me that you just woke up and it's 5 a.m. You roll out of bed, grab the clothes you picked out last night, and you proceed to go to the bathroom to wash your face and get ready. You then go into the kitchen and eat your breakfast and mentally prepare yourself for the day that lies ahead of you, all 13 hours. You will not be done working until 8 p.m. that night, all of that only to make $1.25 an hour. This is the case of workers in the 1920s. Now, you may not believe that events like this previous one still continue today. And you may be partially right. Men and women no longer are forced to work 14 hours a day with such a small fraction of pay. However, there is a wage gap that persists in the current day in which women still only make 80% of what men make. Through my research, and as a woman myself, I have found out how serious the gender wage difference really is. There is still a problematic wage gap, and women should be earning equal wages for equal work today. Today we are going to discuss how the gender wage gap is unfair, how it's ongoing, and some of the possible solutions to the problem. First of all, we're going to talk about how the gender wage gap is unfair. Take for instance the statistic from the author for Black Enterprise magazine, a source for financial empowerment. It says that women are still being paid 20% less than men. 1 year after graduation, women only earn 80% of what men make. This continues to escalate over time as the wage disparity is between $400,000 and $2 million over a lifetime. This especially affects those women who are the head of their household and those who have retired. Take for instance a study done by an editor for the Nation's Restaurant News, a publication that discusses wage differences. The study polled both men and women working in food preparation. Men's weekly salary was $373 in 2003 versus women's salary $326. This gap is even more among women of color. To put this in a different perspective, in 2006, African American women were paid 64 cents on every dollar and Hispanic women only made 52 cents. A writing professor from Western Washington University states that race, ethnicity, and disability status creates more of a pay discrimination. In addition to those of color receiving less money for their work, men actually make more money for every hour worked. According to the Equal Pay Act of 1963, women were promised to be paid the same for equal work as men, and 4 decades later, women are still earning less than their male counterparts, performing the same job in hours, according to Lockyer, editor of the Nation's Restaurant News. To put this in a broader sense, let's say a woman named Susie is employed by a distribution center. It will take her 16 months to earn what her male counterpart will earn in 12. In fact, April 19th is known as Equal Pay Day, according to Lockyer, and this is because of the inequalities in the pay scale. While this discrimination continues to exist, women feel as though their work is forgotten or invisible. Cornish says that it is necessary to make methods that shed light on women's work, because if their work was absent from this world, the global economy itself would suffer. Some say that, or an example of this would simply be equal work for equal pay in both the private and public sectors. Again, Susie would be paid the same amount as Fred for having the same job and working the same hours. Some may say that the wage gap is caused from differences in education. However, that is not the case. An associate professor at the University of Charlotte Greensboro says that higher education among men and women actually increases the wage gap. While higher education increases men's and women's salaries, men are actually still paid more for having more credentials. In addition to education, men with families receive more compensation than women. Women earn 97% of what women without children earn, where men earn 122% of what men without children earn. Now that we have seen how the gender wage gap is unfair, I will show you how the wage gap is ongoing. First of all, society still views women as less. Therefore, women many times believe they are not deserving of the proper wage. They have in essence been affected by the world's perception. Women are also less likely to negotiate their pay than men, again because they don't believe they are worthy, which is by a writer for HR Magazine, a publication which focuses on the human resource management. In addition to not feeling worthy, women are underrepresented in government. However, there has been a lot of research done which states that the difference in pay is because women are many times employed in different industries, such as feminine industries and nurturing, which are typically less paid jobs, which is according to Associate Professor of Sociology at Montclair State University. However, there has been much research which says that the wage gap is actually found in all professions. HR editor Engvall has already cited says that it is found in medicine, in clergy, in higher education, and in accounting. In fact, many times women has the same job as men, but are actually given a different title so they receive less pay. Imagine how that would make you feel. In fact, there was a lawsuit filed against Walmart, which was based on the lower pay of women. We already talked a little bit about the wage gap existing in public and private sectors, but let's spend a little more time talking about it. The gap exists more in private sectors than in public. In fact, U.S. females do well employed in the government sector, according to the Journal of Labor Research by the editor, a publication by the Department of Economics. The difference is that the government pays to attract a workforce at a low and middle skill range, so that way they can pay them less. Now, there is something known as private sector jobs, known as the glass ceiling effect. This term is used when it is used to limit women from becoming higher on the job ladder. And this is according to the editor of Journal Labor Research, whose name is Miller, and he says that the women receive up to 35% less than men. And taking it, for example, a case that occurred within a tax collecting company called GuideStar. The company was found to pay women an incredible 35% less than their male counterparts. If this glass ceiling effect were eliminated, the security of pay equity would challenge the power of men and affect globalization, according to Cornish. The pay gap actually increases with more time spent in the workforce. 1 year after graduation, the pay gap was 20%. 10 years after graduation, it is a remarkable 30%. Take, for example, a man and a woman get an equal job offer at 21 for $25,000. The male negotiates his wage to $30,000 and the female does not. By the time they hit retirement, the man will make over $360,000 more than the female, according to Engvall. Sometimes a male's work is not seen as fit for a woman. Women are oftentimes seen as not having the ability to perform a man's job. Some believe this will lead women to failure, and it is known as the lack of fit bias. In fact, women seen performing typically male jobs are seen as less likable. Take, for example, Sandra Bullock's character in her movie The Proposal. She is the head of a very powerful editing agency, and she puts her workers hard at work. However, her employees do not see her favorably because of that. Now, you may be thinking that the gender gap begins later in life with more income. However, it actually begins when one starts working at ages 14 and 15. Casino says that 14 and 15-year-old boys' wages surpass girls. It's a wage of $440 to $266, and it continues to exist even though girls work more hours than boys. Young girls can expect to earn 13% less than boys their age. Now that I have shown you how the gender wage gap is unfair and ongoing, I'm going to show you some possible solutions to correcting the wage gap. First of all, much of society believes that redressing the issue of wage gaps is not worth the cost, so the issue persists. It is believed to not make good business sense or government policy. However, according to Cornish, a woman's asset is her labor. This asset is in danger without equal pay. We need a woman's work to make society function. Take, for instance, in Quebec. Their Equal Pay Act repaid over 320,000 women the total of $4 billion. This showed women the value of their work and empowered them to participate in a process where their work is valued. Now, moving on to the role of the state in pay equity, they need to continue to play a role in international pay standards. This is done through deciding laws, policies, and institutions. Equal work for equal pay is also another strategy. This must be guaranteed when work is comparable to a man's. There must be a fundamental labor standard which will cover both government and private sectors. There should also be a mechanism that challenges the practice of undervaluing of women, such as gender-inclusive and gender-neutral evaluations of work. An example of this would be polls or studies to make sure that women are treated the same as men. However, it is not all up to the government to control. Women need to take an active role and negotiate their pay. They need to remain reasonably assertive during negotiations and choose a company that has a reputation for treating women fairly. While both women as well as men may not be working the insane 11 to 14-hour work days that they once did, there's still a wage gap. Today we discuss the unfairness of the wage gap, how it is ongoing, and the possible solutions to correcting it. Keep this in mind the next time you see a woman hard at work. Women do 2/3 of the world's work, receive 10% of the world's income, and own 1% of the means of production.